phantom or specter, a menace or friend. Curious tales of the unnatural kind. Welcome to Eidolon. Poltergeist was a collaboration between Steven Spielberg and horror provocateur Tobe Hooper. This movie was a hit when it was released, and it hit me years later when I was a kid and watched all three movies while sleeping over for a birthday party in the basement of a girl's home. And because I wasn't the most well-liked or popular kid in the class, I had to sleep next to the stairs. And I remember that forever. Chilling production legends from the set of Poltergeist. We're talking about the Poltergeist trilogy, first debuting in 1982, which inspired fear and curiosity in the masses who watched it, and were left enthralled by the prospect of ghosts and entities from other dimensions, and the ways in which they can affect our lives. I was for sure one of those people influenced, as when I was a kid watching these movies, I saw people using cameras and equipment to see ghosts, and as an 8-year-old or so, oh boy, I really thought that was something we could do. However, these movies apparently had more going on during filming than anyone thought. From the kitchen chairs stacking themselves to the portal opening in the closet of Robbie and Carol Ann's bedroom, the terrifying haunting that plagued the Freeling family of Cuesta Verde, California, is legendary for as much as what the movies portrayed as what happened behind the scenes. The film had effects not only on the audience, but on the actors who worked on creating the movies. Shooting the films apparently created paranormal activity for various cast members on and off the sets, and rumors of something more unnerving have swirled since the untimely deaths of 4 of the actors. The rumors of some sort of curse relating to the movie from when it was being filmed are just that. Questions of the possibility of malign forces intervening when multiple deaths can be connected to one film project about the afterlife. It's a very convenient rumor to create. The deaths, however, were all unrelated, albeit entirely tragic, and there's no way to prove the movie itself had any direct responsibility or influence on them. Oddly, the deaths of the cast members all occurred just after filming had wrapped on each of the 3 movies. Dominique Dunne, who played older sister Dana Freeling, was strangled to death by her ex-boyfriend a few months after the first film was released. Julian Beck, who played the unforgettable Kane in Poltergeist 2: The Other Side, passed away from stomach cancer just after the filming wrapped on that movie. Taylor, the helpful shaman to the Freeling family, played by Will Sampson, passed away after a risky heart-lung transplant surgery in 1987. But it's the death of Heather O'Rourke, famed for playing the daughter, Carol Ann, and the beacon of light to the other side, which most people recall since many believe her death from a surgery for a long undiagnosed medical condition occurred during filming. Whether or not that's true is still debated, as the ending was apparently rewritten to account for Heather's absence, as has been claimed by the film's producer, Gary Sherman. This film was worked on by both Gary Sherman and Steven Spielberg. Speaking of Steven Spielberg, he was allegedly incredibly involved in the directing and producing of the first Poltergeist movie, but directing credit had to go to Hooper in post-production so as not to compromise Spielberg's contract to make the movie E.T. He was apparently on set for the first movie all the days of filming except for 2. And people have even said, oh, it must be a front so that Spielberg could direct 2 movies at the same time against his contract. But Spielberg always backed up Hooper as being the director of the movie. The next year, E.T. stole every Oscar nomination right out from under Poltergeist as well. The filming itself had some real terror intermixed with the emotional acting as well. The clown animatronic that strangles young Robbie in the first film actually malfunctioned and began to physically choke him. The scene shows more terror than was originally planned for. There's also the very grim rumor that the skeletons in the swimming pool scene in the first movie were in fact real human skeletons. This rumor has been flying through the internet's various forums for as long as they've existed, and it seems to come down to what was said about the cost of props versus the cost of the real thing. And the real thing was apparently cheaper. This is clearly a bit horrifying, and even forgiving the 80s due to an earlier time in movie-making ethics isn't going to excuse that one, Spielberg. The 80s were wild, but using real human skeletons to make any movie is just awful on every level, and it kind of makes you wonder where else that's happened in the annals of movie-making history, and where some gruesome props might have in fact been another uncredited actor. As for more Poltergeist legends, Haunting Activity apparently followed home Jo Beth Williams, who played Mom Diane. She'd come home from filming on set in California and find the photos on her own walls to be crooked. After fixing them and leaving the room, they'd be crooked again when she returned. Filming a movie about ghosts who torment a family led her to believe the Paranormal Activity was related directly to that movie. My favorite actor in the movie is Zelda Rubinstein, who played psychic medium Tangina Barons. During filming, she claimed to have had a vision about her dog saying goodbye to her, and not many hours after that, Zelda's own mother called to let her know the dog had in fact passed away. So sad, but at the same time, there's part of me that hopes that happens to me with my own dog in the future. Speaking of Tangina, who's definitely my most favorite character, she's actually someone who had different elements of the paranormal in her life already before filming. She had claimed there's a few things in her life that she knew before they were going to happen, and she's, quote, not fearful about phenomena that we don't understand, end quote. Everything she shot for the movie made it into the final film as well, and she only filmed for 6 days out of the 12-week shooting schedule. Zelda Rubinstein was that good.
This house is clean.
And there we have the legends and the haunting activity and the untimely deaths associated with the epic, inspiring, and at least for me terrifying to the point of hiding under my covers and sleeping with a nightlight for far too long into my teenage years, trilogy that is, Poltergeist. Whether the movies and the story of the Freeling family inspired haunting activity for the cast members is still a possibility up for debate. Feelings of being unnerved on the second film were so real that Taylor, played by Will Sampson, actually performed an on-set exorcism overnight during filming. While no one knows exactly what happened or what he did precisely, the cast felt relieved and better on set the next day after it had been done. Perhaps their own psyches were stressed and constantly in the mindset of the paranormal, and their own poltergeists followed them for a while after filming. As far as the 4 deaths of the actors in the trilogy series, they're entirely unrelated to each other. Very unfortunate circumstances for all. And while I don't believe there's any curse associated with the movie, their legacies are cemented in the horror archives of popular culture forever, endearing them to our memories and our childhood fears. Childhood fears, indeed. That's really exactly why I picked this movie to talk about in the first place, is because of the impact it has continually had on my existence. And I've had 40 years of existence to ponder this, and I know exactly where the obsession with the paranormal came from. It's these movies. Now, I definitely talked about everything that I could find concerning the movie and all the weird things associated with it, whether it was actors that had passed away or rumors that swirl about the production and the people involved, and even those really weird props. What sets this trilogy of movies apart, in my mind, is when they were released and what kind of technology was being used to make movies at the time. You'll notice the graphics are pretty different. Anything before the late 90s, 1999 and The Matrix really punched us into ultra believable graphics that hit our eyes and brains as seamless. But before that, movies had to do the best they could with what they had, and certain movies, I always give the example of Weird Science. I wanted in my mind, I love that movie, and I wanted it to look so seamless and perfect, but it breaks that suspension of disbelief when bad graphics or subpar graphics are embedded into the movie. So you'll notice in Poltergeist, there aren't really overly used computer graphics, and it's set apart to me because the effects are still so practical, and they can be really, really horrifying if they're really, really well made and well shot and well designed. And I think Poltergeist, the whole trilogy kind of pulled that off. The scene, and I think it was the second movie, where all the heads and the skulls come out of the campfire in the cave, is That's the scene that really broke me as a child and probably led directly to the nightlight situation that I used for so long. I still have nightlight. I say still. Like, I use nightlights in my house at night. They're in random rooms like the kitchen, simply to navigate throughout the house in the dark if I have to get up and take the dog out. It's not based on fear of the dark so much as like, I can't see without glasses and I don't see in the night. So but the effects of this trilogy were so lasting, and it's right at a point where they didn't need giant computer graphics to really sell the story that they were creating. The house implodes, obviously that is some graphics, and they do it. I feel like this production was so minimal on computer graphics that where they used it, it passes. Like, it doesn't pass complete believability to human eyes watching it, but it passes for creating a movie that doesn't take you out of it when these effects pop up. And that's what's so spooky, is how well it was done. The one thing I didn't touch on in the previous recording of this episode was the trope of using indigenous culture to further a plot point or a story, and basically appropriating what's needed in order to sell a particular part of a story or the whole story. The foundation of the plot in Poltergeist is not the Indian burial ground trope or the Native American burial ground trope. The story just contains a character who is a Native American shaman. Is it directly the most correct way to go about it? I don't think it's the worst as far as how to bring in a spiritual person to this story. But the thing is, I can't speak to the accuracy because that is outside of my life perspective. Spirituality within those cultures is not something that I'm versed on or grew up anywhere near. Some of the people who are fans of this movie do take issue with how the character was portrayed, and I can see that. I can understand that. And I can also see where, like, the remedy for the haunting could have been a different type of person. However, I'll say it was maybe more unique for the time for a shaman rather than a priest to be part of the solution to the haunting in these stories of this family, because we got the character Cain, the priest who's corrupt and actually full of evil. So you see where Poltergeist pulls apart good and evil and places particular characters and personas into certain roles. And you can say, I don't like that for that reason. And you can also see it for when and how it was created and how it might have a few little places, at least just like I explained for myself personally, it might have a few foundations in paranormal investigation now, simply for how profound it was and how it just hit the market. Again, like I said, E.T. swept all the awards the year these movies came out, but I love E.T., so I'm like, rightfully so, and Poltergeist scared me, but this movie had, all three of them had such a lasting impact, and all of the lore and the legends and the really kind of dark, mystical things that surround it make it all the more intriguing and all the more timeless. This has been episode 5 of Eidolon. I'm Amy Bennett-Bradway. Thanks for listening. Stay weird.